All systems go. Cleared for takeoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for the Zozo Championship. There's going to be this show, next week a break, and then we've got 3 more fall swing events coming up: the Worldwide Technologies, the Butterfield Bermuda, and the RSM Classic. Before golf takes a little bit of a break, but starting earlier this week with everything being over in Japan. Got my guy Andy with me here as always. We're going to break it down. We'll go through weather. There is a little bit to talk about, but how can it relate, or does it relate at all? We'll get to that in a second. Smaller field, all the things that go with that, some stands within the tiers, answering all your questions. As always, of course, Andy, bring you in, man, ready to talk some Zozo. A little earlier show than usual.
Yeah, absolutely. For the West Coast, for me, I think lock is around like 4:30 p.m. So I'm pretty pumped. It's going to be in primetime viewing for me. And yeah, this is always a fun event. I really like the golf course. We've got some more star power at the top than we're used to seeing, at least this fall swing. The likes of Xander, Colin, Sungjae, Ricky, Hideki, Adam Scott, a lot of Minwoo Lee buzz, which I'm sure we'll get to as well. But yeah, I'm pumped. Let's dive right in.
Yeah, we'll get to these later on. Kenny and I did the first look on Monday. We talked through some of these, but have a little bit more idea about guys down there that we'll talk about that you don't usually see. But like Andy said, there's lots of guys that we do usually see. We'll talk about them in a second. Just to answer my guy Ken, because where the hell is Hoop? We always say this. It's the same people you know and expect. This is a separate show than the usual Ship It Nation content. So when we get to the swing seasons out of the way, it will be Hoop and myself on Tuesdays. And then you'll get this follow-up show on Wednesdays. This is meant to be like the final show you can consume for the week. As always, all the shows on our channel and at ShipItNation.com are free. So there is no worry about having to pay for them. If you're not a member, you can still watch these shows. If you want to become a member, go to ShipItNation.com, use promo code Andy. It'll get you 10% off any of the plans. The trial, by the way, went away yesterday. Yesterday was the last day for it. So it's monthly, 6 months, or annual. You can get it for as little as like $40-something a month, based on the annual, and then go up from there slightly. But the $69 a month would turn into $62 if you use promo code Andy. It's like $14 a week. So very good price for everything that we offer, all the sports that we include on the site. Shout out to our guy, Dream Team together again. We love it. Sean, able to make it. That's awesome, because typically don't start at this time. And Jason, we're going to get to that question when we get to the upper tier. Yeah. We'll take that one first and answer the others. But Andy, weather. A couple things on it. Just before the show was posted out, someone did like a montage of all the players saying how soft these greens are. And then it's going to bake out over the weekend because it's going to be hot and the winds are picking up like crazy on day 2. But the caveat to that is obviously that this is a smaller field and the tee times are extremely bunched, right? They're all going off within, I think, less than 2 hours. I think it's like
right. It's like 8:45 a.m. local time to 11 a.m. local time.
Okay, yeah, that might be right. 8:45, 9:45. Yeah, you're right. That's what it was. Just over 2 hours. I was thinking it was just under. My bad. But you're on it. You got it. So either way, within a couple of hours, I do see like Friday afternoon local time there. Like it looks like it's crazy gusts that people are, I think, really worried about. But like we just said, it's within a 2-hour window. They're all going off. So do you have any thoughts right now on the weather? Any way you'd look at it besides, I guess you could try and stack it if you wanted like exact times, but it's really hard. I don't really see much of a way you can do that.
Yeah. So I'll start with a caveat. We don't have a super forecast for Japan. I'm using, for anyone following along at home, I'm using the Shinofusa Air Base, which I believe is in like a 30-mile radius of the golf course. The big time wind gusts that a lot of people are seeing on Friday afternoon. And again, now, Japanese wind patterns, like Japanese weather, I don't really have a lot of context for it. We don't, it's easy for me to say, okay, I know what the wind is like in Los Angeles. I know what the wind is like in Long Island when we have tournaments in certain areas. We know that tournaments in Britain, and Ireland and stuff like that. We know that that's a little bit more unpredictable, whereas versus what we're seeing on the forecast on Wednesday morning for weather and wind in America, that's a little more sticky in terms of how that will actually play out. Where Japan falls into that spectrum, I don't have a fantastic read on. Now, with that being said, the gusts on Friday afternoon are enough of a problem where I do think it's important to be at least cognizant of what is happening. Now, the key point that you hit on is that this is a limited field event. The guys are going off in threesomes. There's really not much of a wave advantage that you could even try for. There's not staggered tee times. It's all of these 80 players going off in succession in this 2-hour window. Now, if a player tees off at 9 a.m. versus 11 a.m., that does make a difference, right? That is essentially, you're getting 8 holes, maybe 9 holes, maybe before things get really blustery. I expect, as it seems now, for things to start to get pretty bad around noon. So if you're teeing off at 9 a.m. versus teeing off at 11 a.m. could mean the difference between playing 10 holes in poor weather and super windy conditions versus, 16 holes in poor weather and tough conditions. Does that make a massive difference in your pool? Again, worthy of a tiebreak, right? Like if you have a guy at 7K who's going off at 9 a.m. versus 10 a.m. and you want to use that as a tiebreak, the margins are slimmer at the bottom, I always say, go for it. I see value in that. I legitimately do. At the top, it's a little bit more awkward. I will say this. Just looking at the 10K guys, Tambo, and we can use this as a transition to talk about the first tier. Xander, 1035. Colin Morikawa, 1024. Sungjae, 907. Ricky, 929. So if you are in the camp of, even if this 1 hour, hour and a half is going to make a difference, Sungjae and Ricky are probably the guys that you're going to want to go to using that theory versus Colin or Xander.
Yeah, but there's an extra caveat I got to add, and we will transition, but just so people know this too. It's the other thing. You go to PGA Tour comms on Twitter, they have it set up so you can see it. It's also not whoever goes out early when they do it. It's not whoever goes out early goes out the latest the next day. So, for example, Alex Noren goes out an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and 17 minutes after the first group on round 1 with Lingmerth, but he's the first guy out on T10 on the day after. It's not just like whoever goes the earliest. Usually when we see it, it's just a flip, right? The PMAM wave. It's not really how they do it, right? Because it's a smaller field. So like, for example, Taylor Montgomery goes out last off of T1 on day 1. He goes out the middle of the morning. He's in the middle groups going the next day. So it's what you would want to do. I'll come back on my statement. I think, again, over 2 hours, it's way too tough. Weather can change. It's too short. But what you can do, and what I would consider, this is what I would do if you want to go with that thought process, is try and find the guys on round 2 that go out early. So, for example, Ben Griffin, Justin Suh, Buckley, Ben Taylor, Nick Taylor, JJ Spawn, Tom Hoagie, kind of could put like Griot, Riley, and Higo in it. And then on the other side, on the opposite tee, is Noren, Imahara, if we go there, Højgaard, Hostler, Thigala, Im. So, like, if you want to build some Thigala, Im, or Hostler lineups, like, that would be fine. Our guy, which we're going to talk about, Vincent R. Norman, Nick Hardy, and Cam Davis. Ricky's like 9:30 the next morning when the first group goes off at 8:45. So, again, you're kind of cutting into a 45-minute window now. But either way, just to say it, I think what you said is right. If you want to use it as a tiebreaker or you were doing it, go look at the round 2 tee times and who actually goes off during that early time, which I just named sort of all the bigger names if you wanted to. The other quick thing, and the chat brought it up, was do you want to talk about anything from coming from Shriners over to Japan? Obviously, there's some travel involved. Do you care about any of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, at least the Shriners was on the West Coast. We talked about it last week, Tambo, and my big stance on Ludwig kind of turned out to be incorrect, right? Like Ludwig was a big fade for me based on the travel spot. And the guy ended up finishing, I think, in the top 5 with the Sunday 9 under round, right?
Mhm.
So I think for me, Tambo, it's more so about like, has this guy done this before? Has this guy been over to Japan? Has he had the experience of playing golf in this time zone before? Right? Like a player like Hideki or Xander, they know where they're staying, they know where they're eating, they know this golf course, they have the same schedule. Hideki probably has a place here, sleeping in his own bed. Like, I'm more concerned about, has this player made this trip in the past versus whether they played in Vegas last week. I think the fact that Vegas to Japan, honestly, if a guy is coming from Vegas on Sunday, it's actually a lot better than a guy who didn't play in Vegas coming from Florida, if we're just talking about a pure time difference situation.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. And I think, again, too, with the smaller field and all that, like, again, people are going to come up with angles, and that's certainly one you could go with, but stick with it then. If that's your angle, I would hop in with that. I don't do anything like that. Like, again, we've seen it too many times. The sample sizes are too small. And this guy, it's just an excuse. If the guy does bad, say, oh, I knew it. Don't play those guys that played the Shriners. But unless the whole field of those guys doesn't come through, then it gets thrown out the window. Anyway, I'm playing I'm just playing. I don't care as much. It's like people that care so much about who's winning the football game tonight. We are building in scripts when we're doing showdown lineups, but I care about how the field's playing and then exploit that. If people are doing that, then great. But let's talk about that, because this is the first question. Jason brought it up, and it's right into the transition of getting to the top. We've got Xander, Morikawa, Sungjae, and Fowler. Let's talk some ownership up there if you see any steam or where you're at. But I think he's right. I think Xander does come in around 30%. So what's your thoughts on that? And then the rest of the guys in that 10K and above range.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I have Xander right now at 29.5. Would I be shocked if he ends up in the 33, 34% zone? Absolutely not. We saw that a little bit with Tom Kim last week, right? Like, Tom Kim was projected in the 28% range. In the contest that I played in, at least last week, he came in closer to 32, 33. So it's not going to be a surprise whatsoever in these fall swing events. For the most popular option, the highest priced option, obviously the biggest name in the field, with Xander is at least in that tier with Colin and Hideki, to come in higher even than the projection. So I have Xander 29. I feel comfortable with him up to 34. To answer the question, I currently have him out in DraftKings. Now, I'll give you the case why. I think you have a pretty good opportunity on both Fowler, and I don't hate a play on Colin either. There's some guys in the low 9Ks that I like as well. But Xander does have the latest tee time of all those 10K guys. Of all the elite guys, Xander is the one seeing off the latest. Now, how much of a difference that makes? Probably negligible, but you add in the super late tee time with the super high ownership and the highest price. And you start thinking to myself, like, okay, do I like Xander more than Colin in a vacuum? Yes. Do I like Xander at nearly double the ownership, teeing off later, more expensive than Colin? That's a more difficult decision to me. And I think that's the decision that you have to make with Xander this week.
Yeah, one thing about that, I'll say, because I'm definitely not going to be out, and you're the Xander lover. So, I mean, you should love my guy Xander here, because he's going to be my guy this week, it sounds like. But I'm definitely in. I've got him at 30% ownership, better than Colin at 20. So yeah. I'm still playing Xander. I just think he's better than this field. You are right about the tee time. One, I'm not wavering on that too much, but also it's Xander in a no cut. We get all 4 rounds. So even if he has a bad afternoon in that setup, he's got 2 full days to make it up. The price is fair, realistically, for this field. And when you say, like, oh, but he's got to pay off, he's 11K. No, he has to beat what's around him. And it's Kawa, Im, Fowler, Matsuyama, David. Like, I'm playing some of these other guys, only 78-man field, but my stand would be in on him, and that's fine. So I'm definitely still in on Xander. A lot of things to like about him. Fowler's the other guy I like up here. And usually it's funny, you're not as high on Xander. I'm usually super high on Sungjae, but I like Fowler a little bit more this week, just below him. So my guys are Xander and Fowler up top. Other than that, I mean, the other big thing, just to answer the question about the 30% ownership thing, I got all kinds of guys down low that are 5% owned. So again, same as always. We worry too much on the one guy in a bag. Oh, but Colin Morikawa is 20%. You have to pivot to him. It's 10%. It's a major winner. All this stuff. Could that work? Absolutely. That's the game. But I'm saying there's so many places to get different with using Xander still and get away with it. So like, I really don't care about his ownership either. He's going to get over 30% because it's a smaller field. It's a swing season event, early start, everything. People are just going to have the money and the way the board sets up too, to be able to get to him. Did you have any other takes up here in this 10K and above range you want to hit on?
I will say that the one guy I'm absolutely out on is I'm not really understanding the Sungjae love this week, to be honest with you. I can't really comprehend why he's more expensive and higher owned than Hideki. Now, maybe that evens out as Wednesday afternoon goes on. I would expect maybe that to even out. Currently, I have Sungjae at 22 and Hideki at 19. Are you crazy off on that, Tambo, by the way? 22, 19.
I had Sungjae a little higher, but I had Hideki exactly at 19. So
yeah. So you have Sungjae even higher than me. I think 22 is way too high on Sungjae.
Yeah, I had him higher. I had him closer to 25. It just feels like that's where people are going, like Xander or Sungjae. And
why do you think that is? I don't know what I'm missing on Sungjae this week, placed in the context of like Hideki. I understand why people are lower on Fowler. I think you're getting like a pretty good buy low spot on Fowler because I think that sentiment on him is just really low coming off the Ryder Cup. But why is sentiment so high on Sungjae compared to Hideki?
I guess if you go look, like, you could see it, but even then, like, I'm looking at the stats, like last 50 rounds on models and things out there. I don't see it there. So realistically, I think it's going to be some of the projection sites, but even then you still have Morikawa and Fowler in similar ranges there. And then also, I guess the only talk I heard really would be about the Ryder Cup coming second, or sorry, not the Ryder Cup, the Asian Games, coming second for the silver medal, and then also getting the gold medal. And the same thing we talked about with Siwoo last week, which, by the way, it ended up being Tom Kim, who was not on. The only two guys made the Asian Games. It was Sungjae and Siwoo. So Tom Kim, maybe he felt snubbed. I don't know. He's only 21. He's obviously incredible and good stuff from Tom, but still, Tom's the one who got the job done last week, not Siwoo. So I don't know. Maybe that's part of it. But for me, I just think everyone's just going to go to Xander or use the 800 savings. That's why I think you're seeing Colin going a little bit under. So Kenny did love Sungjae, but I don't think that's what's moving the needle as much. He did love Sungjae though. So, for that point, I don't know.
Love Kenny, but I'm totally on the other side of that one. I think Fowler's under-owned this week. I actually think this is a pretty good buy low spot on Ricky. I understand that the Ryder Cup, he was benched by Zach Johnson and he was kind of identified as the weakest link on that team. He wasn't, by the way. Like Jordan Spieth was the weakest link on that team. Jordan Spieth was the guy that they should have benched throughout the entire tournament. I'm not going to sit here and carry water for Ricky Fowler's Ryder Cup performance. He wasn't great, but a lot of that was putting related on a golf course that I did not particularly think was a great fit for his game to begin with, especially compared to this one. I think is a much better golf course for Ricky Fowler than what we saw at Marco Simone. And he obviously has the results to prove it. This is a guy who finished a runner-up here last year, and I have him at 14.5%, Tambo. Does that sound about right to you?
For Ricky?
Yeah.
What I just did on my end, because this is what I use to adjust. Like I have my numbers that I do for SHIPIT Nation, and then I adjust based on sort of market reaction, things that we're talking about. And I just gave Ricky, I just bumped Sungjae down to 23. And then bumped Ricky up a little bit in the difference. So I'm right around, I think 16. I think in my head, just seeing it and talking through it and then looking at some other stuff, I think it kind of makes sense to me. So that's where I'm at as of right now. I'll say like 16 for Ricky, somewhere around 23 for Sungjae is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I will say the credit that we give ourselves on this show matters more in terms of ownership this week compared to other weeks when the regular season starts, just because there's such a starvation of content. And, if you're listening to, maybe there's a couple shows that are being put out every single week. So people are just going to kind of follow a lot of what they hear. And so, I'm totally out on the Sungjae take. Fowler, I have a lot more interested in the 10K range. Should we talk about the nines?
Yeah, real quick, just a couple ones that I like to pull up here as we go along. So Can we get Andy to talk about the current state of Japanese golf architecture?
I would love to.
I bet you would. This ain't the show for that, though. And I love my guy,
Another
Andy, but we're
time.
not doing that today. Decky feeling pressure. We're about to get to that 9K range. One note on this real quick. Is round one showdown viable? Yes. I would say, again, to my point, for round one showdown and first round leader, I would look at the guys going out very early because there was 4 or 5 interviews just pieced together. I saw on one of those sites. It might have been Golf Bet or something on Twitter that I saw where it was saying, it was like a bunch of guys, Xander, Adam Scott, a couple others, Morikawa, saying they all said the same thing in separate interviews where the course is really soft right now, but it's going to get dried out. So I would definitely do that. I can't play 0 im, Sean, but we're taking I said my hard stands. The 2 guys I'm heaviest on are Xander and Ricky. Don't mind talking about that. Obviously, that's the 2 guys that I like the most up top. And then Alex, shout out to Alex. He says, Keegan going back to back here. We're about to get to this 9K range.
There, yeah.
Min Woo's there. Min Woo winning last year on the Asian Tour. You mean last week, I think. But shout out to Myron, always supporting and coming in here. Appreciate you, man. Keegan go back to back and following Tom Kim's footsteps. We do see more and more people go back to back these days. More than I expect, I guess you should say. But Oliver, we'll get to this later. Cam Champ is an interesting topic. So let's do this 9K range, Andy. Hideki down to Sahith. Sahith? I always forget. Potato. But talk to us about this 9K range and anything with those questions that you just saw, because Hideki, Keegan, and Min Woo were all brought up at least once, if not multiple times.
Yeah, so Hideki's my favorite in this range. I'm pretty heavy on Hideki. Ricky Hideki is my core. That's the start of that's the direction that I'm going in this week. I just think the guy is quite simply underpriced and underowned in this field. I've already alluded to the fact that I think he should be higher owned and higher priced than Sungjae. I think in a vacuum, he's a better golfer than Sungjae. He's won at this golf course before. He's finished second at this golf course before. Culturally in Japan, it's just a bit of a different vibe. I don't think that there is this pressure on Hideki to deliver maybe for the hometown fans that other people may be reading into a little bit more. I think that golf is Hideki just showing face here is enough for them. Golf is, it's a cultural art form in Japan, right? And obviously Hideki is their Tiger Woods. He's one of Japan's biggest superstars, along with the great baseball players that Japan has as well. This is obviously a big deal for him, but watch the Zozo. When you guys turn on the Zozo tonight, you're not going to see American fans yelling and jeering. You're not going to see those European jeers and olays and waving their caps. People attend golf tournaments in Japan like they're going to the opera or the Metropolitan Museum of Modern Art. It's a very serene vibe where Hideki will have a lot of support, but I do not think this is some rowdy, pressure-packed environment where Hideki feels like he's already won the tournament too. He's already won here. So I like Hideki a lot. In terms of the other guys, probably Adam Scott is my favorite, but all of these, these next 5, Tambo, I'm curious to get your take. Cam Davis, Adam Scott, Keegan Bradley, Minwoo Lee, Sahith. I have every single one of them between 15 and 23%. Do you see any major outliers in that entire 9K range?
If Minwoo is 23 for you, we're aligned perfectly.
Okay. Yeah, I have him on the higher end, but do you think he's probably our best candidate for late steam, comes in higher than the projections?
I think I put him at 23 and I feel pretty good about that number actually. So I think that is the late steam. I think, because I also think there's enough people that are going to jump off late just because, right? How people do this now and they're like, you know what? I liked Minwoo at the start of the week. I'm going to get off him now because he's getting too popular and I can just play guys around him. So if you were going to get him from 18, 19, 20 to 26, now I pull it back some. I mean, I could put him at 24. Where do you see him at? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I have Minwoo at 19, but that's probably too low right now. I actually, because I just had a group chat message me because I put out my Rick Run Good article this morning and I had him at 18, 19 this morning. And he was like, my only disagreement on you is that Minwoo is going to be above 20.
Yeah, I got him above 20. So
that's probably right. I think Minwoo is probably Yeah, 23. I'm cool with. Who do you think in that case then is the benefactor of Minwoo getting closer to 23, 24%? Is it Adam Scott? Is it Sahith? Is it Eric Cole maybe dropping a little bit below 20%?
Yeah, I could see the Eric Cole one, but I think it's more Adam Scott and
Yeah.
probably Keegan too, but Keegan probably still hits mid-range there, like 15% or so is what my thoughts are right now.
So is there even really a forgotten man in the 9K range? Like who's the
It would probably
lowest?
be
Is it
Adam Scott.
Sahith?
I think I could see Adam
Okay.
Scott for sure being like 11% or something like that.
Love that. If that's the case, I'm probably in on Scott. I mean, who's your favorite in the nines?
I like Sahith at the bottom. He got the win. Monkey off his back. What two guys I like here, and another one I like is Keegan, just because there's no way he can go back to back. He doesn't have to. He's 9,200. He can be my third guy in some lineups this week. But the thing about it is, again, going back to the 4 days, the reason I like Matsuyama, Thigala, and Bradley, a little bit of Cam Davis, but even more than the start of the week, where looking at some of these other guys, is because of the 4 days. Like we just talked about, like Thigala over 4 days, I think he could score. And that's what I want. Matsuyama at 9,800, he's going to have one day with a super low score. And people talk about like Japan and that was before, I think with the Olympics, we were worried about that. Once he won the green jacket, we saw a big weight of like a big, what's the thing, like monkey off your back type feel, like, no more pressure on Hideki. And he was fine. And any of his stuff lately, when you say, oh, he hasn't played that great, whatever times, that's all been injury related. So really, if you'd have more of a worry, it would be that than the other. But with 4 full days, I don't mind him. So Hideki, Keegan, Thigala, and then maybe some Cam Davis. Those would be my 4 in there that are my favorites at least.
Yeah, just addressing a comment in the chat. No way one of the nines gets steamed too high. Too many of them all in one spot, and ownership will be spread out. I mean, it depends what your definition of steamed is, right? Like, do I think it's possible that Minwoo comes in at 25%? Absolutely. I mean, I actually would say that it's likely in certain contests. But do I think that anybody in the nines can catch Xander? No chance, right? Like, there's probably no one's getting into the high 20s, I'd say.
Also, like, book it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, we're talking about both ways, but also too, what this matters. We just said it's going to be balanced. We said almost all those guys have 15 to 23, but what this makes you find is the other way. It's just like when people use projections, like, oh, that guy's the highest projected. You don't have to use the highest projected in every sport. You could say, now I know who the highest projected is. So if this, then that. What I'm doing off the same, I don't disagree with this, but steamed is like you said, your definition. I think if you think Minwoo's under 20 and he gets steamed up to 24, 25, that is still steam. But also, we know Adam Scott looks like the lowest owned guy here from everything else, just the way I'm seeing it. It looks like Adam Scott. Anybody else getting it, he does not look balanced with the rest of the group. Like Cam Davis, Hideki, Keegan Keegan will be probably the second least, but Minwoo, Thigala, all these guys are going to have ownership, like Jo was saying, but Scott and Bradley will come in underneath that. And so it's not really balanced if Adam Scott's 11 and Minwoo's 23. That's the opposite of balanced.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I think that there's a pretty decent chance that Minwoo is double Adam Scott by the time we get here this evening in a couple hours from now. Should we talk about the eights?
Yeah, exactly. Let's go to the 8K range. You can start us off. We've got Eric Cole down to Aaron Ryan Schenk are both at 8K. So give us your thoughts in this range. If you guys have more questions, throw them into the chat. We'll get to them as we go throughout.
Okay, so I have Eric Cole as the highest in this range, but nothing wild. Like I have him around 18%. Adam Svensson, Bo Hostler, and Adam Schenk, I think all hover in the mid-teens. I think that Schenk 16%, Hostler 16%, Svensson 16.7%. I think that's where I have all of those guys. Do you have any massive disagreements in terms of those being the 4 guys that will get the most? And then Aaron Rye and Alex Noren in like the 12-13% zone.
That's I have Rye at 11 and Noren at 13. I actually think this, whatever Jo keeps arguing for, I think is definitely this range. and not as much of the range above. Like, it's like, again, if you're talking about Minwoo Lee at 23 or 24%, and depending on the tournaments you're in, could be even higher, or you're talking about Adam Scott at 8 to 10%, that is not the same. That is completely opposite. You are making decisions then based off of that. There is people that are saying, if this guy, then that, you could still play them and get different elsewhere. That's what I preach all the time. I'm just saying it's not the same as guys just getting spread out. If one guy's 8 to 10 and one guy's over 20, that's not the exact same thing. So we can move on. But I do think this range, like, I've got all these guys besides maybe Eric Cole, Hostler, you mentioned it, Svensson, Schenk. It's all like 9 to 15s in here with Cole at the top. That's how I sort of have it.
So you have those guys lower than me. I have Schenk, Hostler, and Svensson all at like 16.
No, I'm saying I've got Cole right now. I've got Cole at 19, really could probably be 18. And then I've got Hostler 16 and a half, Svensson 15 and a half, Schenk 15.
Okay. I agree.
Yeah. Like that's where I'm saying, like, in this range, you're talking about 8.5 9s to 15s. It's like it's all the same. And then Cole is the only guy that's up there a little bit, but then you have the guys in the 9Ks pulling from him some. So that's how I see this range anyway.
Okay. I agree with you in that case. So would you keep riding Eric Cole? Like, where do you stand on Eric Cole at this moment in time? Because I still haven't made a decision on him yet. And
yeah, I'm not gonna ride him here. No.
Okay. This is a good sell point, right? Like you're basically selling an asset at its highest point. And
pretty much what I'm hoping to do, because he does still rate out very well.
Totally.
Pretty much everything.
Well. Yeah.
But I also think now this is where we have to consider some of that, where it's like, again, he's up to almost 9K, where before he was actually, there was prices even higher of it. But I'm saying, like, now you're adding in Xanders, Morikawas, Sungjaes, Fowlers. I don't have them in that tier. Sorry to all the Eric Cole fans out there. I know there's plenty, but I cannot do that. So now I do consider him in pretty much the right range with all angles. Like, a lot of guys playing well around him. He might be slightly better than them, but again, then that the ownership and the price factor that in. If that's the case, if you think he's that much better than the guys like Højgaard and Hostler and all at Svensson, Shanks, Norrens, all of them, I'm not against you on it. I'm just saying it's factored in with price and ownership. That's why.
So who's your favorite in the 8s? If you had to choose one?
Probably Svensson or Hostler, just based on the price points. You get them right. Like, Svensson's below the average price point. Yeah. My Canadian guy, got to stick with him. But I do like everything else that goes with Svensson here. And really, well, yes, he rates out behind Cole in a lot of these stats. He's like top 20 in the field in all of the major stats that I'm looking at. And then the price and ownership factor in. I've got him at 15%, and he's 8,200, 15.5%. So I'm fine with that. Like, our guy could be, Travis said, lineups, not players. We talk about that because people care about that. We're talking about it again when we get to the regular season, and all the time you see it. I had Sahith at 12%. He landed at 21%, or Patrick Rogers was supposed to be 8%. How do you get to 17? That's why we're talking about how you build is different than the conversation we're having around why or where we think ownership is at. I'm not going to ever tell you guys. I've said this for years. If you follow my content, you don't go, this guy's 14, this guy's 13. I'm going to play the 13% guy. At that point, just play who you want. What we were talking about earlier is deltas that are significant. And then also in this range, we're just trying to figure out who are the guys that are getting the ownership, and then who are the guys that we like. It's just a conversation piece for the content. So for me, Svensson, Hostler, I like. I'm going to go back to the well on our guy, Vincent Norman, double R Norman. I don't hate him. Højgaard at 8,700, I think is still fair. And then that, I guess that's kind of the majority of the talk here. Noren is popular, but it doesn't look like he's going to be as popular as what we thought to start the week. So what's your thoughts on Noren? And then who are the other guys in this range that you like?
I'm going to pass on Noren this week. I know he had a high finish in Vegas. I would actually, if we're talking about a guy in the low 8s, I'm with you on Svensson. And I would probably prefer Aaron Rai on this golf course, actually, to Noren, if we're talking about those guys in the low 8s at mid, kind of lower to mid-teens ownerships. I would also give a shout to, if we're talking about some of the guys that you're going to be able to have leverageable positions on, like guys that I think will be in the single digits. I think that Dietrich is going to be in the high single digits. I think Højgaard's going to be in the high single digits. I think Grillo is going to be in the high single digits, and then Norman and Mitchell. And my favorite of that group, I think you could make a very sound ownership argument on all of them, because I think that, there's not many super leverageable opportunities in the 9 and 10K up range unless you're playing like Fowler Scott. I think one of those low owned 8 guys is really going to hit. And I think if you choose correctly in that group of 5 between Dietrich, Hojgaard, Griot, Norman, and Mitchell, you said Norman's probably the direction you're going in. For me, it's Griot. I think this is a great buy low spot on Griot, but I think one of those 5 is a really like worthy and sound option this week based on the ownership that a lot of other guys in the 8s are getting.
Yeah, and the one note that I had on Monday that I'll still stand by, like people were looking at it from the Noren perspective, because he's got 2 top 20s here. Like it was 2 top 18th, 17th and 18th. He just got a 3rd. But this was where, like I said, you have to zoom out a little bit. Like on, for example, Schenk, who now it looks like they both have same ownership anyway, which is the way the types of these weeks go. But just to note it, is like he has a 16th here last year, which is actually better than Noren's 2 previous finishes. He's come 28th and 22nd here in the 2 other times he's played it, and played it more than Noren. And then, well, he did miss the cut last week. It was literally on the number. He was 1 stroke off, and I know it because he crushed a really good lineup. But then you go back, and he had 6th, 34th, and 6th in his previous 3 events. It's not all comparable, and that's further back. And I get it. I'm just saying, like, when people just go, well, Noren came 3rd last week and 2 top 20s here, it's easy to say that, but you can pretty much say Schenk missed the cut on the number last week, had a better finish than Noren's ever had here last year, has played here more times with multiple 22nds, 28s in those other ones, and before his missed cut was 6th, and 34th. Like, so for me, that's just how I see that. But I did bet Noren at the start of the week at a really good number when Baroff texted me and was like, this is the number to hit him at, 66. And sure enough, he's down to like 45 in places now, and 40. So I do like that. Top 5 each way. I'm good with it. Thanks to my guy Baroff. I appreciate it. But just in general, it's tough to, play everybody in these ranges. So like, that's just one of the things. I have a little Noren, but my stands that I'm talking about are on those other guys that I mentioned. Anything else you got in this 8K range? If not,
no, unless there's any other questions on specific guys, we can circle back to them in the chat. But let's talk about the 7s.
We hit both of these earlier already. Like you can check back the start of the show. Noren did okay in Zozo in the past. Rye, we just talked about that. Rye, thing about Rye is also how you feel it plays out over the weekend. I think I liked your take there, Andy. One thing about Rye, very good around the greens. You miss greens here, and it's possible, especially when it bakes out over the weekend. He's a great scrambler, great around the greens, things like that. You can use him for that angle. Everyone's gonna sweat the putts. That is the problem with him. Sometimes he's missing those 4-footers for that. But if you think the score is going to be like a 15, 16 under, I like him better in a tournament like that all day for sure.
Alex Hahn, you know better than that for me.
Yeah, I know we know what side you're on.
Yeah. We're never playing Beau Hossler. Never, not ever, under any circumstances. Certainly not at 16%. He was okay last week though, right? Like he was what, T30?
Hossler?
Something like that. Yeah.
He got 7th last week. He's been on a run, man. Look, listen to his results. 7th, 28th, 30th, 20th, 13th, and a miscut. This guy's solid.
Wonderful.
And now they drop him to 8,500. Like, come on.
Good job, Bo. I've been doing just fine without you. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. 7th last week was a good number. It was all right.
That's a good result for sure. For sure. I tip my cap to that. All right, let's talk about the 7s. Favorite in this range for me. I love JJ Spawn at 7,900. I'll start there. Spawn always holds a special place in my heart from that big 2022 Valero win. And I think this is a really good golf course for him. And he's playing some really solid golf right now, like back-to-back solid ball striking performances already this fall swing. Pretty high this week as well on Twitter sensation Michael Kim. I talked about him last week on the show, and he delivered for us with 18th place finish at like 6,900 last week. Hit his irons really well and the putter really well. He's mentioned to us on Twitter that, he was battling this tendonitis for a while in one of his wrists, and his wrist is finally starting to feel better. And the iron play looked like it last week, right? Like it already seems like if that wrist is starting to feel better, the stats back that up. It's starting to play dividends already in his iron play. So I think Michael Kim is going to keep the train rolling here with another strong finish. I have him at like 9%, 7,500. I think that is more than fair. So Spawn, Kim are my two major guys that will be in my single entry. What about you, Tambo? And then I'm sure we can talk about ownership as well, because it does seem like there is some groupthink going on here with some guys.
Yeah, I still liked Nick Taylor coming into the week quite a bit.
Yeah.
He's got some late steam, though. I will say this. People are catching on to the fact that it doesn't make much sense that he was 7,100 last week, did really well. He ended up, I think he ended up finishing 13th, and now they just gave him a $200 price bump. Like, he's been playing good golf, so I think he's getting a little steam. That's fine, but I still like him. But I like your Spawn take up top. I don't hate your Michael Kim call. I had him at a little lower ownership, but I could see now looking at some stuff where I think you could come in just a little bit higher. Who else was I looking at here? Higo was 7,800 was one guy. Consideration. Hubbard, Hoagie.
Me too. Good call on Hubbard. I'm with you there.
Yeah, we can go back to the well on him. And then Hardy. I always like Nick Hardy as well. Nick Hardy's $7,500. So same price as Michael Kim, but you can play them both together. I like those two guys there at the middle range of the 7K range. Did you do the bottom yet? Because now this is starting to be like people are bringing them up again, right? Like, we're going to get into the Japanese tour players that play primarily over there that we do see in other cases sometimes. Obviously, Nakajima, one of the best amateurs out there that was coming out, all those factors. But just saying it in general, anybody in the upper sevens that we missed before we go to these bottom 7K range?
No, the only other guy that I'd throw out that's in my pool along with Spawn and Kim is Hubbard, who we hit on. I want to talk about Cameron Champ and Joel Damon, though. Do you think those two are the highest in this range, Champ and Damon?
I didn't have Damon as high. I don't know if as many people will chase that, to be honest, because not everything else out there is on him. But I definitely think people are going to Champ. I had Champ around 13.5%.
I have him even higher. I'm at 15.5.
Yeah, I could go a little higher on him too.
Yeah. That's an easy pass for me. And then Ryder would be the only other one I would ask you about. How high do you have Ryder?
I had him around 9.5.
Yep, me too. Okay, I'm right on the money with you with Ryder. And then I guess maybe transition us into talking about some of these Japan Tour players. Ryo Hisatsune. He's getting some love. I think he's going to be around 10 or 11%. Does that sound about right to you?
I had him lower, but he was one I was going to bump as well. That's another reason why I wasn't saying, I don't think both Joel Damon and him can get the ownership. And I actually think it is going to be him just because enough people are picking him as their guy down here, right? At 7,200.
Are you playing Hisatsune?
I am. Yeah.
He's Baroff kind of talked me into him as well. I think I'm going to have a little bit of him.
Yeah. He was a guy also, I know you're out on Champ, but I definitely do not like the ownership. It sucks. But I talked about this on Monday, and I hate when I go against my own gut just because of an ownership thing. I'm looking when a lot of my Champ lineups are different up top. Some of those other guys we mentioned, but just to say it, I am just worried and excited at the same, whichever way it goes, however you want to look at this, if you're playing him, this is what you're hoping for, is that Champ has been playing really well right now. Is he back? Like, when Champ is on, he's on, but do you think that can stick around? Do you think he's put in enough work to now where you could see this guy come back out? Because his upside is very solid on a 4-day stretch at $7,100. If it's the Champ of old or what we've seen lately, that's some solid upside. The ownership is what kills the vibe at 7,100, but you can get different in other ways. Just give me your thoughts on that. Like, playing a guy for a lower price point of what you expect them to be at if all goes well, right? That's kind of the idea behind the thought process.
Yeah, I've always maintained this. Like, I think Champ is a top 10 talent on the PGA Tour. Like, he can hit the ball 350 yards so effortlessly. The guy should sleepwalk into multiple top 10 finishes every year just based on his effortless power. The reason why I don't like Champ is, like, the book on him, from what I've heard from caddies and players close to the tour, like, he just doesn't love golf. Like, he just doesn't, he hates practicing. So that, I mean, I don't really have interest in playing guys like that. I think he gets less out of his God-given ability than maybe any other player on tour, because he doesn't put in the effort. Now, he probably doesn't really have to put in the effort that maybe Kevin Kisner does to win golf tournaments, right? And like I said, like I think just based on his God-given ability, he could probably sleepwalk into a couple contending finishes a couple times every year. But I don't trust the guy. Like it's not a player that I think is going to at some point somehow elevate into, you know, paying off what his talent is and being a legitimate top 20 guy in the world. He can win any given week, but at this ownership, it's kind of an easy pass for me.
Yeah, I talk about this. I forget what it was with last week, but it's a saying I had. And it's some people if you have both of these, it's a great thing. But some people have a passion, some are there to cash in, and it's okay if you're just there to cash in. Like somebody, again, they got put into golf, they've played it their whole life. It's just what they do now. It's ingrained in them. But they're there. Like people have been talking about this a lot lately with Matthew Wolff. It's not a live tangent to get on with the Brooks Wolff thing, but it's just like at the end of the day, he got paid. He wanted to take the money. He did. And there was the ability for him to sign a contract and take the money, and he did. So did others. But I'm saying that seems like what he wanted to do, and he played golf to get the money, and he got it now. And this is a great setup for him, but he's not putting in the time, and it shows. That's kind of what it is. And Nick made fun of it with Iverson. We talking about practice. But it's definitely a thing.
I'm trying to think who's like I have this on the tip of my tongue because there's probably a really good NFL comp for this too. But who's an example of an NFL player where the book on him is like insane talent, God-given ability, but doesn't really put in the work?
First,
I'm sure there's many.
There was Josh Gordon.
Right. That's a good one. Champ doesn't have like the off the field stuff. Like Champ's not like a problem off the field with anything like that. Like I just heard that he doesn't love golf. Jake Cutler's not bad. Chase Claypool, getting a lot of these good. These are all good. Yeah. These are all good comps for Champ. Yeah.
I like that game though. Just playing it. Like, who are these guys? Yeah, it is true, man. It's tough to say, but it's like, that's part of it, I think, for sure. And again, if you have both, it's better. If you have a passion for something and you can make money with it, that's great. And probably the people that you see doing the best, because it's the top players in the world, that they obviously love the game. They literally want to grow the game on top of it. And then they just make the money. That's just part of what happens when that goes with it. Obviously, that's the best. Someone said that. That's a good one.
Call of Duty Kyler. That's a good one.
Call of
Duty
Kyler. By the way, I think he's going to be back soon, too. I think
so, too. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know about Zeke. Zeke might just not be good, but we'll have to wait and see. But I think it's fine. I like the Kyler one, though, quite a bit, because that kind of goes with like the off the field stuff is more of a joke, like the playing Call of Duty. It's real, I'm saying, but it's not like a Josh Gordon situation where there is outside exterior things with, obviously him having certain addiction pieces and things that you don't want to, harp on a guy for, because obviously it's, people struggle with addiction and things like that. So with Kyler, it's kind of probably a better one. He's so good, baseball and football, and then you're not seeing it portrayed out, but then people say it's because he's not putting in the work or whatever. So, or lazy, whatever it might be.
Should we do any closing thoughts before we put a bow on the sevens? Talk quick sixes and then build a lineup real quick.
Yeah, we are going to build a lineup. You guys can start throwing your thoughts in there. I was just finalizing the ownership. Let's talk about this single entry when we get to it. But do you have anybody else down here? I think I'm going to play some Kevin Yu. 4 days of Kevin Yu at 6,600. Okay. Don't care about the course conditions at that point. I'll just play him. I watched him at, what was it this year? Forget what event it was. Was it the 3M? Obviously not comparable. 3M, there's birdies everywhere, but I'm just saying, like, remember the guy went around there? It was like a 9 under.
Yeah, Kevin Yu's talented as hell. You don't have to sell me on Kevin Yu whatsoever. What about Akshay here?
Yeah, Akshay could be good too. 7,400, get all those birdies. I think Akshay would be interesting for our single entry as like a guy that could just put up the numbers and score over the days, right? You think about that position. He's there at 7,400, right between. And we could still play Michael Kim, but I'm just saying there's guys there like Kitayama, Nick Taylor, guys above that you could play Akshay instead of. We know he can put up the scores. And then just to note down low, because people asked about it earlier, I'll give mine quick if you have any more to add, but Nakajima, Nagano, Semikawa, and Horikawa were the 4 guys that I hopped on down at the bottom. Did you have any others that you wanted to mention? Asian tour players people asked about earlier?
No, I probably trust Nakajima the most, but he'll probably be the most popular too, right? Like Nakajima, former number 1 amateur in the world. I don't think that he'll be crazy highly owned, but like 8% on Nakajima, maybe.
I had 6. We're close.
Okay. I'm cool with that. And then doesn't KH Lee feel like a misprice at 6,900?
Oh yeah, I should note that. I have him at
Yeah.
12%.
Okay. I have him a little bit lower. When I did ownership earlier this morning, I was like, man, this feels like kind of a crazy misprice. I have him at like 7-8%. That's got to go up. So hearing that you already have him at 12, that makes a lot more sense to me based on his price. KH Lee is a guy, already 2 really strong finishes this fall swing. I cannot understand for the life of me why he's below. Like, I love guys like Nate Lashley and Dylan Wu and Sam Stevens. Don't get me wrong. I can't understand for the life of me why KH Lee is priced below those guys. So
My
probably,
heart skipped
yeah.
the beat for a second. I thought you were pulling a Kenny situation where you're gonna you said like about Kenny earlier with you can't stand like for the life of you why you love Kenny but you're not sure why he'd be on him. I was gonna say you're gonna tell me you don't like Lee at that price. I don't like the ownership of what it got to, but again, like you said, you called it last week. You had the Nick Taylor one pegged. I loved him. He was in my core over at SHIPIT Nation. Put him together as just someone who didn't have time that could just hop in and get a core play. That was definitely one for me. And he just seemed extremely underpriced. And to me, that is definitely KH Lee here. That's just a bad price. Will it work out? Who knows? But it's 4 full days of golf, and it's definitely just a bad price at 6,900. He could have been 7,500, and you wouldn't have batted an eye.
Okay. Low owned punt play for me. If anybody's looking for a big time salary saver, I'm going to throw out Justin Lauer at 6,400. I have him like 4 or 5%. One of the best pure bentgrass putters in this entire field. If you're looking for a guy that can just purely putt his way into contention, I think you could do a whole lot worse than Justin Lauer. Anybody else that you want to give a shout to before we build a lineup?
My Canadian, Mackenzie Hughes, 6,700. Definitely have a little interest there, but that's probably about it. Myron, we just mentioned him. I said in on Nagano. Definitely think he's relevant here and possible to use. This is a good joke, but I don't think it matters. Again, 4 full days, 6,900 bucks. If it goes backwards, so be it. But I'm just giving examples here. Davis Riley, maybe one other guy that I have. But yeah, Hayden Buckley. I will say this, Lee Aldrich at DK Golf Bargains on Twitter. He has the course fit rankings, which absolutely crushed last week. We've got him over here at SHIPIT Nation. Again, you can use promo code Andy. See the site there. You can use promo code Andy, get 10% off. Every single person last week made the cut. Tom Kim was way up the board. JT Poston way up the board. All the guys that were in there just absolutely crushed. Buckley is one of his guys this week. So I had to get a little action in on the Buckley play here. And I only have him at like 5%. So I think he's fine as well. People were talking about, I forgot, we asked about the comps before, because I said throw your guys through the lineup out there.
Such a good one. Yeah.
I don't think we're putting Jamarcus Russell in our single entry, though. So you guys can throw in some guys that you want us to think about for our single entry. And Andy, as always, is customary. For those that don't know, we're building the $200 single entry this week, 10K up top. I'm going to put it in there. The lineup we come up with, Andy will have his guy. I'll have my guy, or 2 guys we combine on that we'll put in. The chat will think of 4. We do a giveaway from it. Last week we min cashed with a 5 of 6. That was $25 for 25% of $100 profit. We're going to add that up so that we have a good giveaway when we get there. But $25, baby, in the tank. So we've got $25 to give away. We'll work on that in the future. Who's your guy? You mentioned someone earlier that I really liked, actually.
Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 options. Do you have a preference between Spawn or Michael Kim? I just love those guys in the mid to high 7s.
I do, and it's JJ Spawn, but I wouldn't hate either of them. Okay, I like your Akshay take though.
Okay, let's put JJ in, and we'll give a yellow to Michael Kim and Akshay. Those guys are both on the periphery for us. Let's see what the chat is saying.
And we're not putting. We can see if we get to Xander later, but you're out on. I think we should take Xander and Champ out of it, because you didn't love Xander and you didn't love Champ. And I said about Champ, I'm playing some because so people know, but I don't love what his ownership got to, but I'm playing him for like a what if situation. So that's how I'm building my lineups accordingly.
Yeah. I'm out on Champ. Yeah, I'm out on Champ. I'm out on Min Woo. I'd rather play Xander than Champ or Min Woo for what it's worth. So if there is if
we land there, yeah, I agree on that.
There, if the chat goes crazy for Xander, I'm certainly not opposed to it. I'm seeing a fair amount of Ricky and Adam Scott love, which I don't hate at all if you want to go in that direction at the top.
If we can get Ricky and Scott in there, and we could still afford a lot at that point.
So let's say, how much money does that give us on average if we go Ricky, Scott, Spawn?
And I plugged in Akshay for now.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of Adam Scott love. I like that a lot, especially if he ends up being closer to that 11% and the lowest owned 9K player. I think it's a really sound play this week.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of love for him to start, but when we had the conversation earlier, which is why I like doing the show at the end of the week, after everything's out there, after all these things, I do think it makes some sense to be able to, go to him here and just in this range. So
I'm seeing some Svensson love too. And I think that both of us are pretty high on Svensson as well. If we want to see if we could sneak him in there. Ricky, Scott, Svensson, Spawn, then we'd probably have to get somebody cheap in there.
It lands us on Michael Kim and Champ, or it lands us on what's the guy at 7,200? How do you say his name? Hisatsune.
So if we have like a 2v2 situation, we can leave that one up to the chat.
Okay, so this is the 2v2s for the chat, and I'll let you comment too, but just to say it, like Akshay and Ryu there is one, or you can go with Champ and Michael Kim, or you can go KH Lee, but then it kind of puts you in a no man's land of like Ben Griffin, Michael Wallace.
KH Lee and Hubbard. How about that?
That's a good one too, actually. I just saw, sorry, I was going max money on my 2v2s, but
yeah,
KH Lee and Hubbard. So here's what I'll do. I'll run them in the chat. So it is KH Lee, Hubbard. Let's do it this way. See if I can do this right.
People love Champ. I think we got to, if they're like, I'm wrong all the time. I think we got to ride, even after we give Cam Champ these Jamarcus Russell, Johnny Manziel.
No, man, they can ride Champ all they want.
I'm seeing a lot of Champ. Hey, we do this democratically. If Champ is the guy that everyone,
I'll stay on an extra 2 minutes just to get these votes in. Here's how we'll do it. KH Lee Hubbard. It's Champ, Michael Kim. I'm putting M Kim just to make it easy.
Okay.
And then the other one was Akshay and
Hisatsune.
Yes. We know. Everyone knows this. This is
okay. So just out of curiosity, Tambo, who is your favorite combo of those three?
So just so people know, KH is 1, Champ is 2, Akshay is 3. Put your number in the chat. It's so easy to type a number. 1 KH, 2 Champ, 3, 4. Who was the third one?
People are,
Ryu. Yeah, too late. You guys got to start over. A number's easy to hit, though. So do it. 1, 2, or 3 is where we're at. Well, you do that. I'm going to look it up here. So just to see it, mine would be, I think, who did I put KH with? With Hubbard?
Yeah,
I think I kind of like the KH. Man, we just talked about how KH is just a bad price. We just hit it with Taylor last week. We got to add these up in a second, so we'll do it. But
it's pretty good. This is 1, 2, 3, good split here. Like we're getting some interest in all of them. I think to me, it's looking, without counting, it's looking like KH Hubbard's leading the charge, and I like that a lot. I'm pretty comfortable with that. I think that's
KH 1 number. Everyone's got number 1. So all these Champ lovers went away when they saw the 2v2.
Okay. So our lineup is that the chat, for this giveaway, if this lineup hits, if I have this correct based on memory, Fowler, Scott, Svensson, Spawn, Hubbard, KH Lee. I kind of love that.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
I kind of love that.
All the money for you, Tweezy, my guy. You can get it. I got some lineups with you, so maybe we can connect. But overall, man, I don't know. We can't call a guy Jamarcus Russell and Kyler Murray practice levels and then just jam them in the lineup, unless people wanted it. But I can guarantee you, I did the math. The numbers add up. People want KH Lee and Hubbard. I actually think 3. 1, 2. No, Champ did get the second most, so it's okay.
Okay.
We'll take it. I'm going to roll it with that one that we just said, though. So just again, it's Ricky, Scott, then it's Svensson, Spawn, Hubbard, KH Lee. And then if you guys want to plug your 2v2s in, you can throw them in somewhere. I think that's a good lineup. I think that's a good.
It's a great lineup.
Zozo,
and just,
too. I like that.
Just one final reminder for everybody before we sign off here. Lock is in 5 hours. What? 6 hours, maybe?
4 hours, 45 minutes.
4 hours, 45 minutes. So get your lineups in now. And then I haven't looked at TV coverage. Are we getting this on Golf Channel tonight? Hopefully. That'd be fun.
If we did, that'd be great. I didn't see it, though. I had the tee times up here first. Just 1 second. Accordia, all times listed Eastern time, blah, blah, blah. How to watch. Listen, Golf Channel. 11 p.m. to 3 a.m.
Eastern.
Okay.
So 8 p.m. for myself. All right, Tambo, any closing thoughts, my friend?
Just trying to get these lineups in before it's almost sold out. I will say that DraftKings is almost sold out. So that's good for the people still loving the game. Well, while we're not here and, this swing season, but who's the last guy? Champ. I was just plugging it in, trying to talk and think at the same time. Not well. But any final questions from anybody? No, I don't see anything else out there.
Champ, we didn't go with Champ. We went Hubbard KH.
Yeah, I made sure of that. You think I'm not playing? You think I can let these 2v2s? The FOMO is way too much, Andy. I got to get in before that tournament sells out. So I wanted to get my last couple in.
Okay, cool.
To the $25 with our 2v2s, because that way if it hits, we can at least chop it up with everybody else that had their picks on those sides. So it's exciting.
Okay, awesome.
We'll get after it. Anything else you want to talk about? We will have a break next week. NBA launch is back. I'll talk about that in a second, but there's a break next week for NBA coming back. And then we're back on the 1st, right on November 1st is the Worldwide Technologies. That's what we're going to be talking about next time.
Awesome. Yeah, this is a blast. Thanks as always for the support, everybody in the chat. And we'll see you guys in 2 weeks' time. Yeah, if you guys want to check out SHIPITNation.com, I'll bring it up again. But just so you guys know, we did do the 2-hour NBA DFS process course. You can use promo code Andy to get 10% off when you go to sign up. But it's pretty easy. You get everything included. So right now we have obviously NFL in full swing. We just had D-Dry. You can go check on this channel. I interviewed him with Hoop and Title. He was on. Dalton Dry won the Millie on Sunday. He's a Ship It Nation member. And then we had a crazy Monday night in the Showdown streets to back it up. We've got NBA coming back next week, NHL in full swing, MMA, and then PGA. If you sign up using promo code Andy, works out to like $13, $14 a week. Even if you just sign up for the first month, you can get it cheaper than that for the 6-month or the annual. But also PGA, you'll get in the next month, you're going to get still the last 3 events of the swing season, the Worldwide Technologies, the Bermuda, Butterfield Bermuda, and then the RSM Classic. So check it out. Go to ShipItNation.com. Use promo code Andy. For myself, ToeTagginTambo. Let's ship it.